Greetings, dear viewers. An all-terrain vehicle is a lightweight four-wheeled vehicle, often designed for overcoming various types of off-road terrain. Nowadays, this type of transport is widely used. Some people use this machine for utilitarian purposes. The all-terrain vehicle is an indispensable helper in many farms. They use it to work agricultural land, transport goods, and so on. Some people use such a four-wheeler to go fishing or hunting, for example. Others use this type of vehicle purely for fun. They find challenging routes and compete in overcoming swamps, mud, slopes, and rocky areas. A small number of people participate in professional competitions on ATVs, and there are also miniature low-powered ATVs for children. In this episode, I'll discuss the history of this vehicle, share interesting facts and records, and explore the topic in depth. I invite you for a few words about ATVs. You are on the CrossMoto channel. Enjoy watching. The definition of a vehicle called an all-terrain vehicle is on the one hand quite simple, but on the other hand, there are some nuances. If we break down the term, quad meaning four and cycle meaning wheel, it refers to any four-wheeled vehicle. And formally, this definition includes most cars and any other vehicle with four wheels. However, nowadays, a quad bike usually refers to a four-wheeled vehicle with handlebars and motorcycle-style seating. A quad bike is essentially a four-wheeled motorcycle or all-terrain vehicle, and in English-speaking environments, you will often come across the term all-terrain vehicle, all-terrain vehicle. This name is not tied to the number of wheels and covers a somewhat broader range of vehicles. Different sources date the appearance of the quad bike differently. Some trace it back to the early 19th century, while others consider the starting point to be the release of Honda's first three-wheeled all-terrain vehicle, the United States 90 in 1970. We're not in a hurry, so we'll dig deep. Before we review the history of quad bikes, we'll take a short commercial break. The sponsor of this episode is the marketplace for selling, buying, and searching for parts and components for cars, trucks, and special equipment called UMITPRO. UMITPRO is not just an online showcase for spare parts. It is a systematic tool for interaction between sellers and buyers in the field of auto components and spare parts. The main goal of the service is to eliminate chaos, distrust, and wasted time that accompany the traditional spare parts market. The platform features smart search, allowing you to quickly find the part you need. The secure transaction system protects sellers and buyers from fraud risk, while the built-in messenger lets both communicate without using other apps. This platform features a unique request system. When buyers submit requests, they're filtered and sent to sellers with those parts in stock. Sellers can also subscribe to requests to find customers, simplifying interactions and saving time. The platform is available through the UMIT Pro website and a mobile app in the App Store and Google Play called UMIT, Auto and Truck Parts. Sell and buy parts smartly. All links are in the description. Historians note two stages in quad bike development, with the first in the 19th and early 20th centuries. Bicycles grew popular as personal transport in the 19th century with continual design improvements. Engineers soon came up with three- and four-wheeled variations of bicycles. This design was a response to the need for greater stability and passenger capacity. According to one version, one of the earliest such vehicles was introduced back in 1819 by Edmund Carteret. Carteret developed a four-wheel bicycle at the end of his life. He would die in 1823 at the age of 80. Decades later, an Englishman named Willard Sawyer from Dover became interested in Carteret's ideas. He used thin steel rods for the frame of his creation. He managed to achieve a weight of around 32 kilograms for the four-wheeled bicycle. Sawyer presented his invention to the public in 1840. and continued working on improving the design. Sawyer presented the upgraded carriage at the Great London Exhibition in 1851. According to another version by Palm, the priority is given to the Briton John Ward, who presented his prototype of the quadricycle in 1850. It was a stable rear-wheel drive carriage with steering. The cart was powered by the rider's leg strength. The frame was made of steel, the rear wheels were 40 inches in diameter, and the front ones were 34. Velocars, which is one of the names for such light carriages, continued to develop. At the 1853 World Exhibition, several prototypes were presented. On one of them, the wheels were positioned at the corners of a rectangle, and on another, at the corners of a diamond. As a result, engineers preferred the first layout, as it was somewhat more stable. The 19th century was a vibrant period of engineering triumph. Various mechanical devices were being created everywhere. Steam engines were used in factories and on railway locomotives, and a number of engineers and enthusiasts were working on internal combustion engines. Very soon, self-propelled vehicles would begin to appear. It was logical for people to install internal combustion engines in existing carts and bicycles. That's actually how motorcycles and automobiles were born. So adding an engine to a velocar was inevitable. That's how vehicles often called quadricycles appeared. That's not a deliberate mispronunciation on my part. The beginning of the term really does sound like quadri, and this term was quite popular for naming anything with four wheels at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th. Many early car prototypes can be considered quadricycles. For example, in 1884, the quadricycle La Marquise debuted, created by the Frenchmen de Dion, Bouton, and Trepardoux. This little car was a prototype of a quadricycle with a steam power unit called La Marquise. It ran on wood and coal, and in 30 to 40 minutes enough steam would build up in the boiler for movement. The machine could accelerate up to 60 kilometers per hour. By the way, as of 2011, La Marquise remained the oldest working car in the world. In addition, De Dion later built more than one Daimler Stahlradwagen quadricycle, which appeared in 1889, and is also a quadricycle. This was the second car built by Gottlieb Daimler together with Wilhelm Maybach. The vehicle was equipped with a V-shaped internal combustion engine. The Stahlradwagen caused a sensation at the Paris exhibition, and this design attracted the interest of Armand Peugeot. Within a year, Peugeot was producing similar self-propelled carriages: Peugeot Type 2 and Type 3, Ariane, Autogo, Quadricycle, Truffaut, Duryea, Motorwagen, this four-wheeler. The 1898 Royal Enfield and other early creations by automotive pioneers can also be classified as quadricycles. At this point in the story, it is essential to mention the figure of Henry Ford and the first vehicle he built. Early in the morning on June 4, 1896, Henry Ford took his first test drive in a small four-wheeled machine, which he called the Ford Quadricycle. Despite a successful test drive, Ford was not satisfied and rebuilt the quadricycle. In the following months, he and his assistants replaced many wooden parts with metal ones, installed a cooling system in the engine, and fitted stronger wheels. Unlike most motor vehicles of the time, Ford's quadricycle stood out for its compact size, with a 124.5 centimeter wheelbase, 2 meter length 114 centimeters width, and 109 centimeters height. The vehicle was equipped with a two-cylinder engine producing 4 horsepower, weighed 230 kg, and could reach speeds of up to 32 kilometers per hour. For the 32-year-old Ford, the successful first run of the quadricycle was the result of ingenuity, determination, and hard work, which later earned him the title of a genius in the automotive industry. Ford sold his first quadricycle for $200 in 1896 to Charles Ainsley. Later, he built 2 more quadricycles, one in 1899 and another in 1901. Eventually, Henry bought back his first creation in 1904 for $65, and the quadricycle is still on permanent display at the Henry Ford Museum in Dearborn, Michigan. The Ford Quadricycle was well received by the public and highly praised. Many people started talking about the quadricycle because it was more stable than a bicycle, had an engine, and was cheaper than a full-fledged car of that time. In fact, even in Ford's very first creation, you can see the desire to make a simple, mass-produced, and affordable product. Another quadricycle that I consider important for history is the Motor Scout, designed by the British Frederick Richard Sims in 1899. The Motor Scout was the first armed vehicle with a gasoline engine. It wasn't intended for driving across plowed fields, but overall, it was suitable for providing cover or supporting infantry and cavalry wherever there were roads. Don't assume engineers abandoned velicars after the internal combustion engine appeared. In 1924, Frenchman Charles Maché unveiled his own velicar to the public. The model was a two-seater. While one rider pedaled, the other could rest. The technology differed from the 19th century prototypes by having extensive bodywork, a roof, and something resembling a windshield. In the early 20th century, the automotive industry rapidly developed, causing demand for small quadricycles to nearly disappear. This vehicle type was long forgotten. Public interest in light, capable vehicles began in the late 1950s and 1960s, first emerging in the United States. This period is called the Golden Era. After World War I, the United States experienced an economic boom and higher purchasing power. Having a couple of cars per family becomes the norm. In addition to cars, Americans buy items like small motorcycles for kids and special household equipment. Among certain segments of the population, there was a growing demand for light all-terrain vehicles. One of the responses was six-wheeled, all-wheel drive, often amphibious vehicles. For example, Jigger, produced by Jigger Corporation Amphicat, produced by Mobility Unlimited Incorporated, and Terratiger, produced by Ellis Chalmers Manufacturing Company. And the term all-terrain vehicle was originally coined specifically for these six-wheelers. The Jigger was the first all-terrain vehicle. Its early models were built by JGR Gunsport in 1961, and mass production began in 1965. However, in 1968, production came to a halt due to the company's financial weakness despite high demand. Around 3,340 Jiggers were built. These vehicles gained popularity even in small numbers. 6x6 and 8x8 amphibious all-terrain vehicles are still made today, but they have one drawback that modern all-terrain vehicle riders wouldn't like: the lack of high speeds and dynamics. These amphibious vehicles are practically unstoppable, but their maximum speed is only about 30 kilometers per hour. They are primarily used in extreme off-road and swampy conditions. Something more fun was needed for easier off-road conditions. Modern all-terrain vehicle history isn't linked to those all-terrain vehicles. It started with the three-wheeled all-terrain cycle. In the 60s, Honda was already successfully entering the United States market with its reliable, affordable motorcycles. The marketing was very well organized, positioning Honda users in contrast to bearded outlaws who preferred Harleys. Honda dealers, however, faced yearly sales declines each winter. A motorcycle isn't suitable for winter riding on snow or ice. The Honda management decided it was necessary to develop something that could be used all year round, and they managed to find a way out of this situation. In 1967, engineer Osamu Tokiyuchi and his design team were assigned to develop an all-season off-road motorcycle. Tokiyuchi explored various technical concepts from 3- to 6-wheel designs before choosing a 3-wheeled structure with low-pressure tires, driven by an engine with an increased displacement of up to 90 cc from Honda. And after 18 months, the first Honda 3-wheeler, designated United States 90, was ready for the 1970 model year. Most sources of information attribute the invention of the 3-wheeled all-terrain vehicle specifically to Honda. We also shouldn't overlook the contributions of Tokiyuchi Saitira and other engineers, designers, and marketers at the Japanese company. Their contribution to the development of off-road technology is enormous. However, Honda was not the first. There is a much less well-known vehicle called the Tricart, which debuted 2 years earlier than the United States, 90. This three-wheeler appeared thanks to the efforts of John Plessinger. In 1967, as a college student, he built his all-terrain vehicle for his graduation project. After graduating, John leased the patents and rights to his creation to New Holland, a company known for its agricultural machinery. Production of the Tricart began in 1968, and soon the lineup expanded to 5 models. It's unclear whether UCO was inspired by Plessinger's creation for the United States, 90, or if Honda's engineers independently designed the three-wheeled all-terrain vehicle layout. What is certain is that Honda's marketers and advertisers had to use all their ingenuity to make their products widely known and to capture the lion's share of the new off-road vehicle market. A notable example of advertising was the United States 90s appearance in the 1971 James Bond film Diamonds Are Forever, starring Sean Connery, and also in television series such as Doctor Who and Magnum, Private Investigator. Initially, the United States 90s hubless wheels were fragile and expensive to replace. By the way, when creating such wheels, Honda engineers were inspired by 6x6 technology. But by 1974, the wheel design had changed to a more traditional one, which has remained to this day. In 1973, Honda registered the all-terrain cycle trademark, and from then on, all three-wheeled all-terrain vehicles were called all-terrain cycle. The success of this machine was overwhelming. Both adults and children rode it over rough terrain for fun and enjoyment. They were also favored by various types of gamekeepers, surveyors, foresters, and farmers. Meanwhile, models with standard luggage racks and chain devices were made for the latter, while high-performance all-terrain cycle versions were designed for adrenaline enthusiasts and competitors. In the 70s, Honda faced no rivals in this niche and patented their technical solutions promptly. However, closer to the 80s, the other members of the Japanese Big Four still bought the rights to the patents in order to take a share of the market from Honda. They already had to show ingenuity. Yamaha launched the TR Zinger miniature model for children, while Kawasaki debuted with a large three-wheeler featuring a 200cc engine, making it the market's most powerful in 1981. Of course, you might ask why. I've discussed tricycles for several minutes, even though this episode focuses on quads. Still, without tricycles, modern ATVs wouldn't exist, or they'd exist but with another history. Here's the thing. By the early 80s, the market for three-wheeled all-terrain vehicles was booming. Over 1 million of them had already been sold. As their numbers grew, injuries and deaths from their use also increased. Both adults and children were getting seriously injured. Overall, in the 1980s, about 1,000 people died on three-wheeled ATVs, and around 300,000 suffered various injuries. At that time, many lawsuits sat unresolved in American courts, alleging motorcycle manufacturers made dangerous tricycles. And by 1987, the Department of Justice was already actively working on this issue with 5 manufacturers of such vehicles. That's the Japanese Ford and Polaris. As a result, the parties came to a decision to ban three-wheeled off-road vehicles in favor of more stable four-wheeled ones. And this decision gave a serious boost to the development of four-wheeled ATVs, which already existed at that time and were gradually evolving. By the way, I have a detailed story about the rise and fall of Honda and TC Tricycles on my channel. Here's a pop-up hint. The ban on the production and sale of three-wheeled ATVs in '87 had an extremely positive effect on their four-wheeled counterparts. To be precise, it was a moratorium, according to which the leading manufacturers of three-wheelers agreed to stop producing such vehicles for 10 years. As you can see, after that period, none of the companies resumed making three-wheeled ATVs. By 1987, manufacturers had heavily invested in four-wheeled all-terrain vehicle design, especially in operational safety. Quad bikes are generally more stable than three-wheeled ATVs, and their four-wheeled Dual-track design differs from three-wheelers except motorcycles with a sidecar. However, the modern quad bike did not appear at the time the moratorium on the production of all-terrain tricycles was established, but somewhat earlier. Suzuki often claims to be the first to create the quad bike in the modern sense of the word. But long before Akigota from Suzuki dared to install a fourth wheel on his own Suzuki ALT 125 tricycle in 1982, there was another quad bike. This is the RAP Gojo, and it's the world's first modern four-wheeled quad bike. RAP Industries was one of the first American manufacturers of quad bikes, go-karts, snowmobiles, mini bikes, and other off-road vehicles. The company was founded by Mickey RAP in 1912 and was highly influential, developing many designs that were later successfully copied by other manufacturers. The RAP Gojo began production in 1973. The all-terrain vehicle originally had an 8-horsepower engine with a mini version offering 3.5 horsepower. And later, during production, it became possible to order the all-terrain vehicle with a single-cylinder two-stroke engine as an option. Keller 295cc displacement, which turned Gojo into a pretty lively off-roader, capable of reaching a speed of 90 km per hour. It's not exactly known how many RAP Gojo units were produced, but eventually production stopped. When the company faced financial difficulties in the second half of the 70s and went bankrupt in 78, ironically, RAP was ahead of its time. The popularity of ATVs would sharply increase 10 years later. Some might consider the four-wheeled Honda Odyssey, which began production in 77, to be one of the early modern ATVs. However, the Odyssey is a small car, and its steering wheel is actually car type. Let's get back to Suzuki. Remember, I said that Honda dominated the three-wheeled all-terrain vehicle market throughout the 70s, and the other three Japanese Moto 4 manufacturers hesitated to enter this niche for a while. But at the start of the 80s, they finally did. And when you have to catch up, you either show ingenuity and creativity, or most likely, nothing will work out. Then at Suzuki, an engineer suggested creating a four-wheeled all-terrain vehicle. The bet was that it would be a novelty and a curiosity on the market, which would definitely attract public interest. In 1982, Akigota built a four-wheeled all-terrain vehicle using the three-wheeled ALT 125 model as a base. Within a year, the design was refined for mass production, and in '83, Suzuki's all-terrain vehicle model made its debut. Quadrunner 125-400. This all-terrain vehicle, designated LT 125, pleasantly surprised off-road enthusiasts and dealers, not only with its new appearance and four-wheel chassis, but also with its automatic clutch and a transmission with 5 forward gears and 1 reverse. Actually, the 4x6 index meant 4 wheels and 6 gears in the gearbox. This compact all-terrain vehicle was equipped with an 11-horsepower engine, which was quite sufficient for its intended tasks. And do you know what advertising slogan the Suzuki marketers came up with? Quote, "Feel the sensations of riding that you've never experienced before." Suzuki's new all-terrain vehicle, now with 4 wheels, elevates off-road driving to a new level. At Suzuki, they understood perfectly well that they had entered a new niche of technology with certain prospects, and they worked at an accelerated pace to expand their lineup. In 1984, besides the LT 125 the public was introduced to, they introduced the LT 50 model for the youngest riders and the larger utility LT 185. At that time, there was a belief that the dominance of three-wheeled ATVs in racing was undeniable. The newly appeared four-wheelers were heavier, and many thought they were only suitable for casual riding or utility use. Suzuki disproved this view in 1985 by launching 2 sport models, the LT 250R with a powerful liquid-cooled 2-stroke engine, and the more modest Quad Sport LT 230S featuring a 4-stroke engine. Both ATVs featured a lightweight chassis made with numerous aluminum parts. In 1987, Suzuki introduced in their lineup of ATVs, V4 wheel drive introduced users to a machine that could tackle off-road terrain previously unreachable by ATVs. On the LT four-wheel drive, the design allowed the driver to choose between all-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive modes. The transmission had a low gear, and in addition, there was the option to lock the front differential, so the Quad Runner 4x4 could get out of almost any off-road situation. And also, in that same 1987, one extremely important all-terrain vehicle model appeared in the history of Suzuki, and in general in the history of all-terrain vehicle S, the Suzuki LT 500R Quadricycle. The legendary Quadzilla, that's the nickname users gave this machine. Subtitles created by Dima Torzov. It was the most aggressive and daring all-terrain vehicle of its time. It had a 500cc two-stroke engine, ready to lead anywhere. The two-stroke 500 produced around 70 horsepower, and that was for a curb weight of 178 kilograms. Despite its short production run until 1990, the LT 500R became a legend thanks to its incredible power and performance. Whether on the track, sand dunes, or in the forest, the LT 500R always led the pack. Competitors from other companies were by no means idle. Back in '84, Honda introduced their own version of a four-wheeler. It was the TRX 200 model. The year '85 was marked by the release of the world's first all-wheel drive, all-terrain vehicle. This was the Honda 4Trax TRX 350 4x4. It got a limited slip differential and an engine with an oil cooler. A year later, sales of this all-terrain vehicle began, and in 1986, the lineup expanded with the sporty 4Trax 250R model featuring a two-stroke engine. High-performance engine. Yamaha also tried not to fall behind, and in '85, their first four-wheeled all-terrain vehicle model, the YFM 200, went on sale. In '86, Yamaha introduced a four-wheeled replacement for the 3Zinger. It was a miniature kid's all-terrain vehicle with a 60cc two-stroke engine. A year later, in '87, the Banshee 350 model debuted with a two-stroke, two-cylinder engine. And even though it was a bit less powerful than the Suzuki Quadzilla, 53 horsepower versus 70, it still found many fans. Moreover, the model turned out to be long-lasting. The Banshee was produced from '87 all the way until 2012. The discontinuation of sales in some United States markets, later in Canada, and the subsequent end of production was due to stricter environmental regulations. In 1987, Yamaha introduced another sport all-terrain vehicle model, the Warrior 350. The Warrior became the world's first sport all-terrain vehicle with an electric starter, and also the best-selling sport all-terrain vehicle in the world. The Warrior was equipped with a 350cc four-stroke engine, a 6-speed gearbox, adjustable long-travel suspension, and hydraulic disc brakes both front and rear. Also in 1987, the Big Bear 350 was introduced, Yamaha's first four-wheel drive all-terrain vehicle, as well as the Terra Pro model, which is notable for having a power takeoff device from the engine. In fact, the Terra Pro was a piece of farming equipment that could be fitted with a wide range of implements: mowers, cultivators, agricultural sprayers, post-hole diggers, and much more. The Terra Pro was equipped with a four-stroke 350cc engine with an oil cooler and a forced cooling fan, a 10-speed high-low range transmission with reverse, and a lockable rear differential. From the Japanese Big Four, we still have to look at Kawasaki. They introduced their first four-wheeled all-terrain vehicle to the public in 1985. This would be the Bio 185 or KLF 185 model. Overall, it was a product much like its competitors. A year later, the larger Bio 300 was added to the lineup. In 1987, Kawasaki added 3 more all-terrain vehicle models, and the following year introduced the M110 and 250, light four-wheelers for active recreation, The second one was equipped with a fairly powerful 4-stroke engine with a 4-valve cylinder head. The third model was the sporty TK 4 with a 2-stroke 250cc engine. In '89, the Bayo 300 all-terrain vehicle model became all-wheel drive. The American brand Polaris also joined the all-terrain vehicle race. Polaris initially capitalized on the popularity of 3-wheeled ATVs, experimenting with this design and producing a range of equipment. Polaris, the Trail Boss. 250, introduced in '85, became the first mass-produced all-terrain vehicle by Polaris. The Trail Boss was equipped with a Fuji 2-stroke engine, the same as on the snowmobile, but with a reduced displacement. Snowmobiles inspired an unusual solution for the Japanese Big 4 ATVs, the continuously variable transmission. During the late '80s and early '90s economic downturn, Polaris captured about 25% of the United States all-terrain vehicle market. In 1990, the Big Boss 4x6, a unique 6-wheeled all-terrain vehicle, debuted. That same year, the Trail Boss 350 debuted with a 4x4 wheel configuration and liquid-cooled engine. There were also 4x2 versions of the 350. In '95, the Polaris Magnum 425 appeared, equipped with a 4-stroke Liberty engine that was manufactured in the United States of America. And a year later, the first Sportsman appeared. And also, on the American continent, more specifically in Canada, there is a company that has been producing various all-terrain vehicles for a long time and is primarily known for its snowmobiles. This is Bombardier Recreational Products, or Bombardier Recreational Products for short. Initially, this company was engaged in creating snowmobiles, but as various vehicles became popular, Bombardier Recreational Products' product lineup gradually expanded. In 1972, a subsidiary named Can-Am was founded to focus on high-performance motorcycles for motocross and enduro from 1972 to 1987. Can-Am motorcycles were modeled after Spanish Bull TACO technology, using a standard frame that fit various engine sizes. Rotex engines from Bombardier's subsidiary were used. Can-Am motorcycles gained fame through various United States races. By '97, the company had been reorganized, and its management targeted the all-terrain vehicle niche. In February '98, a prototype utility all-terrain vehicle called the Truckster was introduced. Later that same year, Bombardier Recreational Products began working on its second all-terrain vehicle, the DS650, which was designed for sports enthusiasts. A Wikipedia article says that in 2004, this Can-Am model won its class at the Dakar Rally. RL, however, a separate all-terrain vehicle class, was established for Dakar in 2009. The Truckster was known for moving its fuel tank and engine to the rear, leaving the usual tank spot in front of the seat empty, and this feature made it easier for the driver to get in and out. Many farmers, gamekeepers, cattlemen, and other workers who had to get on and off the all-terrain vehicle multiple times a day appreciated this feature. The Quest model was introduced later. Essentially, it was the same Truckster, but with a continuously variable transmission. In 2000, Bombardier Recreational Products added an additional all-terrain vehicle variation called the Truckster Extra Large. It was the first 4x4 all-terrain vehicle with a tilting cargo bed. So, we've just covered the era of the all-terrain vehicle boom in the 1980s and 1990s, as well as the period of rapid development of four-wheeled all-terrain vehicle S. Overall, that's when the main types of ATVs were defined by their design and purpose, and this classification had already been worked out on the previously popular three-wheeled ATVs. At the end of this chapter, I think it's necessary to mention two all-terrain vehicle models that were created in the Soviet Union. By the mid-'80s, it was already noticed in the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics that light four-wheeled ATVs had become popular and widespread. Since there was a demand for such vehicles, engineers began developing them. The first Soviet all-terrain vehicle was the Zavod imeni Malyshev 350, also known as the Zavod imeni Malyshev 6901, designed at the Malyshev plant in the city of Kharkiv. The first prototypes were completed in 1989. It was a two-seat rear-wheel drive utility all-terrain vehicle weighing 320 kilograms. The engine was taken from the IZ-8 Jupiter 5 motorcycle, and it produced only 18 horsepower, and it was tuned for torque. The Zavod Imeni Malisheva 350 could reach speeds of up to 50 km per hour. The engine was paired with a 4-speed gearbox with reverse gear and a 2-stage reducer, which doubled the number of gears. The Zavod Imeni Malisheva 350 could handle many transportation and utility tasks. Additional agricultural equipment could be mounted on it, especially since the all-terrain vehicle was equipped with a power takeoff shaft. The Kharkiv all-terrain vehicle went into small-scale production in 1991, a few months before the collapse of the country, and was produced in limited numbers until 1999. The second all-terrain vehicle was developed in the city of Kovrov at the Degtyarev plant. It was called the ZDK 175-4 SHP, and it was equipped with a locally produced engine from the Voskhod 3M0, one motorcycle. The all-terrain vehicle was developed at the end of the war. 175-4 SHP, like the Zavod Imeni Malisheva 350, was designed as a utility vehicle. The ZDK featured a locking differential, reduction gearbox, and power takeoff shaft. However, very few of these ATVs were made, something around 600. The country fell apart. Motorcycle manufacturers were going through tough times, and most of the population who theoretically needed this kind of equipment was barely making ends meet. Moreover, with the collapse of collective and state farms, villagers got the opportunity to buy used agricultural machinery, and the ATVs, which were recently in short supply, turned out to be of little interest to anyone. In the 21st century, all-terrain vehicle designs kept evolving, marked by a major shift in sports all-terrain vehicle concepts. Two-stroke engines were being phased out in off-road sports, and there came a time when an entire family of sports ATVs with 450cc four-stroke engines emerged. This resulted from changes in off-road motorcycle sports, including a new 450cc class and updated technical regulations. Many believe Yamaha and Honda started this niche in 2004, but that's not completely accurate. A few years before the 450s from those two Japanese brands appeared, the first sport all-terrain vehicle of this class was built in the United States. There was a company called Cannondale. It became famous for its bicycles. In the late 90s, rumors spread that they aimed to enter the motocross enduro motorcycle and all-terrain vehicle market. In 2000, Cannondale launched a motocross model, and the FX 400 all-terrain vehicle followed by the FX 440. The first batch of motorcycles did not receive enthusiastic reviews. There were issues with handling and suspension. However, the all-terrain vehicle did not have these problems. The only thing was that riders complained about the engine's low reliability and strong vibrations. Cannondale FX 440 was the first sport all-terrain vehicle in history with a liquid-cooled 450cc four-stroke engine. It was ahead of its time, featuring an aluminum frame 5 years before Kawasaki and fuel injection 4 years before Suzuki. Cannondale offered 4 versions of the Quad, Blaze, Cannibal, Speed, and Moto. The company supported customers and recalled products for malfunctions. But the good news ended in 2003 when Cannondale couldn't overcome its difficulties and went bankrupt. A year later, everyone was talking about ATVs from Honda and Yamaha, and most people had forgotten about Cannondale. It's quite possible that the FX 440 was what gave a push to the development of the 450 class. By 2004, Honda and Yamaha had already succeeded in this field. They introduced the TRX 450R and YFZ 450 models, respectively. These were extremely lightweight ATVs with long travel suspensions and aggressive 4-stroke fuel-injected engines. In fact, you were getting a race-ready all-terrain vehicle that right after leaving the dealership was ready to compete on the track. This equipment set a new standard for racing ATVs, and other manufacturers designed their machines with Yamaha and Honda as their benchmarks. The development of racing ATVs with 450cc engines didn't stop with the big Japanese four. This time, almost all the brands we know took part in the project: Polaris, Can-Am, Husong, Arctic Cat, United Motors, and KTM. By the way, the latter entered this niche because Polaris owned 25% of KTM's shares, and they ordered engines from KTM for the Polaris Outlaw 450 MXR Sport all-terrain vehicle. KTM management decided to launch their own line of sport four-wheeled ATVs. There were four models. Polaris and KTM had different chassis, running gear, and suspension, but used the same engines. The late 2000s and early 2010s became the golden era of sport ATVs, but a decline had already begun. Economic recession and shifting consumer preferences caused a noticeable decline in sport all-terrain vehicle popularity. This was most noticeable in the 450 class. These days, there has been a renewed surge of interest in this class of vehicles. Development of utility and all-wheel drive ATVs in the 21st century has seen a steady rise in engine size and power. If in the 80s and 90s, an engine size of 250cc was considered average, by the 2010s, the average had reached 500 and 600cc, and larger ATVs can boast an engine size of 1 liter. At the same time, brands still offer models with small engines. In particular, there is a distinct class of 50cc ATVs for children. Among all this variety, there are a number of iconic and legendary models. Let's remember them. For example, the Yamaha Raptor 660R, which debuted in 2001 and set the standard for large sport ATVs. In 2006, it was replaced by the Raptor 700R, the 686cc single-cylinder engine featuring fuel injection and strong low-end torque delivered excellent dynamics. The unique steel and aluminum hybrid frame made the chassis lighter and ideal for both sports and aggressive riding on public roads. I've already mentioned ATVs in the Dakar Rally in this episode. Since 2009, ATVs have been categorized separately into 3 groups: single-cylinder vehicles up to 750cc and 2-cylinder machines up to 900cc. Here's an interesting fact. From 2009 to 2024, every first place in the all-terrain vehicle class, year after year, went to the Yamaha Raptor 700. In the Dakar of 25, All-Terrain Vehicle S did not participate. The organizers excluded this category due to insufficient support from manufacturers. Stimulated, configuration followed. What do you think is the maximum speed an all-terrain vehicle can reach? For example, can the Can-Am Outlander 1000 Max reach 132 km/h? This powerful all-wheel drive all-terrain vehicle conquers off-road terrain. Sporty lightweight. 450s can reach speeds of around 120-130 km/h, and the KTM 525 XC could go up to 145 km/h. The Yamaha Raptor 700 reaches about 130 km/h. However, the record for the maximum speed on an all-terrain vehicle is much higher than the numbers mentioned. On June 15, 2008, the American Terry Wilmette reached a speed of 315.74 km/h on an all-terrain vehicle. This occurred on the runway at Madras, Oregon's airport. The indicated speed is the average value of 2 runs in opposite directions to eliminate wind error, and the record was officially recognized and entered into the Guinness Book of Records in the pursuit of speed. Terry Wilmette based his work on the legendary Yamaha 700 Raptor and radically modified it. His creation was named ALSR Rocket Raptor version 6.0, and the name contains a key word that gives an understanding of how Terry managed to achieve such a high speed. He actually cheated by adding a jet engine to the design. The modified 700 boosts the all-terrain vehicle to 220-230 km/h. Neutral is engaged and the jet engine activated, continuing acceleration. The two previous all-terrain vehicle speed records also belong to Wilmette. A year earlier, he accelerated the fifth version of the Rocket Raptor to 249.5 kilometers per hour, and before that, in June 2006, the fourth version reached 240.5 kilometers per hour. Let's get back to iconic all-terrain vehicle models. One of them is the Bombardier Recreational Products Can-Am Renegade XMR 1000R. This is truly an iconic and even legendary all-terrain vehicle from the Canadian company Bombardier Recreational Products, which is designed to conquer extreme off-road conditions. And it does this excellently. In addition to its outstanding off-road capabilities, this is also a very prestigious model, a true luxury of the all-terrain vehicle world. The formula for success is a combination of unstoppable off-road capability, high engine performance, and aggressive design. It keeps up with the Renegade 1000. Polaris Scrambler XP 1000S is also a crazy machine for off-roading. Among utility ATVs, the Kawasaki Brute Force 750 and 450, the Can-Am Outlander lineup, several sportsman models from Polaris, including the hard-working 6x6 wheel formula, the Honda Foreman, and the Suzuki King Quad family have all proven themselves well. It's worth saying a bit more about the Yamaha Grizzly 700 and the Grizzly family of utility all-terrain vehicle S in general, which originated in 1998. In 2007, the Grizzly 700 appeared, and it was the first all-terrain vehicle in history to be equipped with electric power steering. This system reduces the effort required by the rider to steer, which increases comfort and generally expands the capabilities of the all-terrain vehicle. Nowadays, this system is common on many large ATVs. It should be noted that as of the 2020s, ATVs are produced not only by the brands that have already been mentioned in the story. There is a whole array of Chinese brands that produce four-wheelers, ranging from 50cc children's models or battery-powered ones, all the way up to huge leader-class utility vehicles and aggressive off-roaders. However, at the moment, the Chinese are still catching up. They've learned to copy, but still lack in quality and performance. For example, the Sony V-twin engine copied from Rotex by CF Motu produces only 75 horsepower, while the original from Bombardier Recreational Products delivers 91 horsepower. Russkaya Mechanika, a local brand in Russia, is a company based in Rybinsk near Moscow. And it's also possible that there are other companies I haven't mentioned. Overall, by the 2020s and even before that, the main types of ATVs had already been established, and there really isn't much left to invent. The further development of ATVs focused on improving individual components and assemblies, increasing comfort levels, and adding various assistive features to the design. In the last decade, there has been a trend toward creating electric ATVs. Many brands are trying themselves in this niche, including Polaris, Bombardier Recreational Products, Japanese and Chinese manufacturers, and so on. At the end of this chapter, I'll tell you a bit more about all-terrain vehicle records. The longest journey on an all-terrain vehicle was made by a trio of Australians, Valerio De Simone, Christopher Devant, and James Kenyon. They called their adventure the Quad Squad Expedition. Each of them rode their own Yamaha Grizzly 700 fuel injection, 4x4, electric power steering all-terrain vehicle. The guys started from Istanbul, Turkey on August 10, 2010 in over 437 days and 19 hours. They traveled through 37 countries. They racked up 56,239 kilometers on their odometers. The record is based on the lowest odometer reading among the team members. The trio finished on October 22, 2011 in Sydney, Australia. The ATVs were not changed during the journey, meaning the same three Yamahas that started from Istanbul finished in Sydney. Repairs were carried out as needed along the way. Jamie's all-terrain vehicle was donated to the Powerhouse Museum in Sydney, Australia, after the journey was completed. Subtitle. The largest all-terrain vehicle parade took place on September 16, 2009, at the Rocky Mountain All-Terrain Vehicle Jamboree in the town of Richfield, Utah. they gathered enough all-terrain vehicle riders to set a world record. The parade started with 1,947 ATVs participating, but some dropped out along the way, and the final number was 1,870. There are a number of records for the longest all-terrain vehicle wheelie, and there are actually subcategories of this type of record. For example, there's a record for the most people involved. 17 people managed to climb onto an unmodified Honda 350 all-terrain vehicle and ride 50 meters on the rear wheels. The longest reverse wheelie on an all-terrain vehicle was set by Roger LeBlanc. He managed to ride 1,579 meters and 67 centimeters, the longest side wheelie. That's when two wheels on one side were in the air while the other two were riding on the road. It was performed by the French stuntman Yannick Dupont. He managed to ride in that position for 34 kilometers and 279 meters. The longest ramp jump on an all-terrain vehicle was made in 2008 in Melbourne by John Getter. He jumped 53 meters and 92 centimeters. Friends, at this point, my few words about ATVs come to an end. The history of ATVs is extremely interesting and unique, and I hope I was able to introduce it to you. Thank you very much for your attention. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, share this story with your good friends, and subscribe to the channel. If you haven't done so yet, be sure to write in the comments whether you've ever ridden an all-terrain vehicle, or maybe you're a lucky owner of a four-wheeled vehicle with motorcycle seating. This was the Cross Moto channel. See you next time.